Well, good afternoon, men and ladies. Wonderful to see you out there. I can't see you, you can see me, and I'm excited about the fact that you have come to join me. I am T.R. Covers, and I'm the host of the podcast Masculinity, Blessing or Curse. Excited about a topic, a few things I want to share with you today. I want to talk to you about some of the things that I see as some of the great differences that overshadow being, say, a parent, a father, particularly in this generation versus the one before. In this podcast, what I try to do is to connect the two generations, what I consider to be the Moses generation, of which I am a part, and the Joshua generation, those that are below me in terms of age, that is millennials, that is Gen Z, etc., so that we could gain some communication level, some respect for one another, and gain a relationship that allows us to, well, allows each generation to capitalize on the successes that you've had and pass on those success prototypes, but also to learn from the failures that we've had and therefore grow thereby. Today, I want to talk to you about, let's see, there are, and I'll just say it this way, there are some things that I think men, fathers had as an overshadowing cloud that allowed your voice to have more strength. Let me be more clear. There are some things that were commonly said in most every generation and maybe even every culture that allowed you to get away with some things. For example, the term because I said so. Now, if you are of a certain age, you heard that statement. And after that statement was levied, you knew you did not challenge anything that happened after that. Because I said so was enough of a reason for you to just shut up. We're not debating. And I say that because I know in this generation, many of the parents have the idea of allowing young people, their children, to express themselves. If they disagree with something, that they would allow their children to voice their opinion. Now, I'm not going to judge one way or the other. I know that's the way I was raised. When I heard the statement, because I said so, that was it. You didn't challenge, you didn't push anything beyond that. But I am aware that this Joshua and beyond generation has a more open dialogue. I said to you before, church church attendance was not a debatable idea. You were going. It was, if the family is going, you are going. Now I grew up in an environment, because my parents, my personal parents, grew up going to church first and third Sunday. My wife's parents was a little bit different. They were every Sunday. Every time the church doors opened, they were there. We were not that. But when the family did go, you were going, and it was not an option. And that kind of stems off into because I said so. And I'd welcome your opinions and thoughts about the kinds of sayings that I'll go through here. And I have 6 or 7 of them that we'll talk about today. But that's the first one I want to deal with. Because I said so. And if they said it in a certain tone, that was the end of it. There was no conversation, there was no debate, and you almost couldn't even pout about it because your facial expression might have suggested that you didn't agree with that, and that could get you something. By the way, some of the things that we dealt with are things that would probably get you arrested, or at least allow the children to call child child beating or something, whatever they call it now. The second one is a common one too. I think I grew up in a family of plate cleaners. You, before you got up from the table, would clean your plate. Now, that's significant today because, well, first of all, let me just say, I know now that that was a financial thing. If if Mom, dad have paid for this food, you're going to eat it. And it was not an issue of whether or not you liked it. That was not, no one asked, what do you want? And I know that's a conversation that often happens nowadays. What do you want for them? What would you like? And in fact, nowadays, I think it happens, and I know it happens with my kids, my grandkids. One kid wants this, and another child wants that, and you're accommodating to that. Well, no, that didn't happen in my house. This is what we have, and you are going to eat it. Now, I was that kid. Certain foods I did not like. Okra was one of them. Ooh, no. And you could probably guess why, but I won't go through that. Didn't like it. Now, my sister, cousin, another story, lived with us. She loved it and she ate mine. I got away with that. But we were plate cleaners. And before you got up from the table, in fact, my mother didn't even allow you to drink anything before the plate was clean. You couldn't drink anything. You couldn't like put it in your mouth and then wash it down real quickly with some kind of fluid, some drink or something, Kool-Aid. No, no. You didn't drink anything until you finished cleaning your plate. Now, I know that was financial. This is what we have. This is the we are not, there are no options for you to get. And we do want to be sure that you are full because you're always courted with this whole idea of some child in a foreign country that didn't have enough. And even though you didn't know them and you would, in your mind, you could say, I would welcome giving it to them. You dare not say that out loud. But that situation. I do understand people have argued the other side of that, that what that did was created an environment where a lot of young people, a lot of adults now, are obese because they were trained in the dogma of clean your plate. Even though they weren't hungry, even though they didn't want to eat or whatever the case might be, they were, the law was that you would clean your plate. So now I understand from people saying that that was possibly the birthplace of the notion of creating obese children. Okay. But it was one of the things that the now baby boomers probably grew up with. Another one that I'll mention, and it's kind of part and parcel to that one. You're driving along in the car, and I might in the back say, "There's Burger King. Can we go to Burger King?" And I remember Burger King was it was a big, it was a Whopper. It was really a Whopper. It was the whole plate. It filled the whole plate, and it was 50 cents, 2 quarters. I remember that 50 cents for a Whopper. You could share it with someone. You know, it was big. But the response is, we have food at home. Now I understand that, again, that was a financial issue. It was not so much we didn't want to make this gift of eating out available, it was a financial issue. Of course, now, again, eating out is so common to the families of today. Eating out is just regular. It's what happens 2 or 3 nights a week, and again, several, even ordering in, having the food brought in, and all of those things are now there. But the whole idea during my childhood of we have food at home, that negated any kind of you didn't even get to sit in the back seat and say, "Oh no, you never take us in." No, no, none of that, none of that. And so there's a over a cloud that kind of looms over your parenting and gives you more strength because it was something that every parent pretty much was saying, and it was consistent across the board. Kids may have compared notes. There was no internet and you comparing things online, anything like that. But in your neighborhood, you heard those same things. So it was not a challenge there. Uh, the next one that I'll give you, and this one is one that probably affects little boys maybe a little bit more. Walk it off. Suck it up. Right? And it was commonly said, and again, I think a lot of the things that were very common during our day or growing up were hinged on our lack of finances. We didn't have the money to be able to address a minor issue. Now, if it was a major issue, then you have to deal with it and you have to go to the hospital or emergency room or doctor, or whatever the case might be. But otherwise, put a band aid on it. Let's go. Keep going. And so there was there was a high tolerance for pain. And as I alluded to with the plate cleaners a moment ago, it probably negatively impacted particularly boys with this idea of you don't talk about your hurts, you don't talk about your pains. I think a lot of it, again, from in that era, mirrored our lack of the finances to address those things at an ER. There's an ER now on nearly every other corner. If it's not a convenience store, it's an ER of some kind. And I was driving today, there's an ER for pets. Gosh, that's where we are now. But during that era, suck it up. And you even knew, and here's another one, don't come into the house until the street lights are on. You can't come into the house. If you're a boy, you better find a tree. Girls were allowed maybe to come inside. Come inside that. You didn't want, if you wanted water, if there was a water hose or something, don't come in the house. If you come in the house, then there was the argument that you may now have to stay in the house. So this issue, and I mention these because these are parenting issues that impacted who you are as a father, as a man, et cetera, et cetera. If you're in the house, those are some, quote, conveniences of that era that happened. Of course, again, suck it up, walk it off is probably dangerous to us now because it means that we don't talk about our hurts. We don't talk about our pains. And men, like any other human being, have hurts and pains that we often need to talk about. Mental health is important as well. Okay, is as important as your physical health. Next one, let's see. Everybody in your community, family, and the school system had the right to punish you. And I mean corporal. I mean corporal. Everybody had the right to do it. Parenting, you talk about it takes a neighborhood to raise, a community to raise a child. A community could do it. Your relative, uncle, aunt, if you're in certain neighborhoods, the neighbor had a right to. And wow, the last thing that you want to have happen is the teacher calls your house. Oh my God. Now, my mother, I don't know how she did it, but my mother had us in private schools from third grade up to seventh grade, 3 to 7, which, during my day, high school started at 8th grade. So elementary school was K to 7. From 3rd grade to 7th grade, I was in private schools. $3 a month, a whole lot of money. $3 a week, $12 a month. But that's what it was. My teacher and principal both had a time at me. It was there. And once they finished, now you got to go home and get another one. It was just that. Again, probably get arrested for that now, but it exercised this thought of discipline. You did not color a whole lot outside of the lines. Everyone was involved in rearing the child. It was a community affair. Good or bad, that is what, if you're my age, I'm 70, if you're my age or anywhere close to that, you're probably familiar with a lot of these things going on. I could see that now some people took it to an extreme. I would hear about people taking a cigarette and extinguishing a cigarette on the child's body and beating them. And nowadays, the newspaper is filled with parents who are shooting their children and think, oh gosh, But I mention these only because that atmosphere was present during that era, right or wrong, good or bad, it was there. And there is a different atmosphere now. I hear younger men talking about the communication that they have with their sons and how they play ball with them. They coach their little league teams. My dad never threw a ball to me. Never. It was never happened. I went to his grave, probably didn't know who Bart Starr or Vince Lombardi or anybody like that. Never knew who they were, I would imagine. But it wasn't because he didn't care. It was because my dad had a third grade education. So any and all work that he had was labor intensive. And it meant that he was out of our house at about 6:30 a.m. and he's back in about 10 p.m. all day long, every day, every day. Well, maybe not Saturdays. Then he's resting until my mother got him up to cut grass. So, but that's what it was. It was the way life was. There's a different thing happening today, and so a lot of our young men can't relate to the things that we're talking about, and we may not be able to relate to what they are dealing with as fathers, as husbands, etc., etc., because it's a different climate, it's a different atmosphere, and it's a thing that we have to talk about so that we can unravel, unpackage all of the hurts. Um, and here's another one related to that. When mom would say, if mom was home during the day and dad's at work, that wasn't my case, but if that were your situation, you heard this one. I'm going to tell your dad when your dad comes home. I'm going to tell your father when he comes home. Now that was, stop, red light, stop. Because what that said was that mom had gone as far as she could go with you, and that now the curtain of doom has fallen. And you are now in this state of emotional, psychological depression that you're going to die. You just think you're going to die. Now, again, wasn't the case in my house personally, but I do know that that's out there. And that's not, in many cases, the kind of impression that current dads want to instill in their children. And there's a lot of things going on with it. I am impressed and proud of the young men who are now fathers, who are now husbands, who now participate in the family structure the way I believe the Bible has designed it. And I applaud those men who, despite the fact that they may have been influenced by some of these thoughts and opinions and slogans and sayings, etc., that they have been bold enough, man enough, to take on maybe a different view of things. And the disciplines that are there, it's important to be able to establish the disciplines, the purpose in yourself and for your children, that they are individually loved, not just as a group, but individually. I have three children, they're three different people. So we had to address them in different ways. And it wasn't just a cookie cutter that you're doing. Again, I have a tremendous amount of respect for young men who are raising or being fathers and husbands in their homes to do the right thing. I know of some men who have children in multiple stations. In other words, they fathered a child that they are no longer with that mother and that child, and they have another family over here. That to me is wow. That is just a lot, a lot. But I commend you in those, and I know a few guys who are involved in that, and it's constantly juggling. But these are things that, as we talk about them, we hopefully encourage each other through them. Whatever it is you're going through, men, you're not the first one. You're not the only one. You won't be the last one. If we're able to join our hurts, our pains, our experiences together, we'll be able to encourage each other, validate each other, respect each other in our respective places, and find the space that God has identified us to have. Again, I want to encourage you to be the kind of man that would earn the respect of your children, your spouse, and most of all, give honor to God, who is our creator and maker. It's been my joy to share with you today. Thank you so much for staying with us. Please, if you would, subscribe, and that way you can be notified each week. I broadcast each Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. after church, and I'm kind of relaxed now down. So thank you very much for tuning in, and please share with a friend and include comments if you would. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments, and I look forward to sharing with you next week. Have an awesome day. God bless.